Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's lesson is all about atmospheric perspective. Now this is a big one because it's a skill that a lot of people are intimidated by, but I want to give the disclaimer that you do not have to start huge with a full-blown illustration in order to make atmospheric perspective work for you. What you see here is it's a hybrid iguana. It's an illustration that I did just with a pencil. It has a little bit of everything. So we have some plants in the background, we have an environment, we have this iguana creature looking up at this caterpillar on the branch, ready to eat it. And I wanted to give the illusion that this creature isn't just plopped on a page because it's a 2D drawing, but rather it lives within an environment and you open the page and it's coming out at you. That's what I'm going to show you how to do today. Okay, so let me zoom in here real quick so you can actually see some of the details. And also that's what's on the thumbnail for this video. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff going on here that you're probably wondering, how did I do it and how did I get that effect? And I know it's kind of like a cheeky answer, but it's you push harder in certain areas and you don't push hard in other areas. That's how you achieve good value anyway when it comes to dark to light, after you layer it, of course. So I thought, you know what, why don't I revisit this sketch and start adding some more stuff to it? Because there are definitely some things in the foreground here, maybe like some flower petals or some plant stalks or bark trees, whatever, that I can add, and it can still make it seem like this creature is living within a specific place. Okay, so first things first. What am I using? 4B pencil. All right, it's a 4B pencil, and the really darks in here. It was just kind of like an outline. There's some spaces in between here. That is black Prismacolor, but we won't be getting super dark today with anything. I used it where I felt I needed to, and then that's that. In this case, we're going to be adding some stuff over here on the right because I feel I can add some plants. Now, when you think about atmospheric perspective, those of you that don't know what it is, it's the illusion of depth within your 2D drawing. That's like the layman's terms for it. You can Google the definition. It's going to be reworded a little differently, but in a nutshell, that's what it is. Okay, so what I like doing first before I add any details is I want to put in an area of value where I feel something could be put on top of it. Okay, so I'm holding my pencil lightly at the very end. Okay, so notice how it's sharp. The other thing that I want to do is tell you that you should probably avoid shading by turning your pencil completely to the side and shading with the entire sharpened bit. It looks like crap. It doesn't matter how good you are at layering it, it's not going to look good. You have to tilt it slightly so that you have more control with the tip of your pencil. Not like this, because that's not shading anymore. But when you tilt it upwards like this and then you allow some space underneath, you can control it much better. There we go. And also, when you do it like this, the strokes are smaller and thinner, and you can fill up more space and gaps on your paper. If you turn it completely to the side and shade like that, yeah, it can give texture, but it also looks like cement everywhere. And sometimes you don't want that. So I'm going to plug in an area here, and I'm going to shade in a couple different directions. And actually, I think I'm going to shut my curtain a little bit. Maybe too much blue light is showing from the sky. Okay, so that might be a little better. Yeah, there we go. Okay, that's a little better. I'm using like the really good sunlight that comes in between now and maybe 12 p.m., so we'll see how it goes. But anyway, we have some shading going on this side. Right about there. Okay, and what this also does is it creates the illusion of mist. And that's exactly what I want. Okay, so you're probably asking, why do I want mist in this? And that is when whatever we're drawing, like with me specializing in creatures, when I'm drawing a creature, I want to give the illusion that it is living and breathing inside of an environment. And I like putting mist in there because it makes it seem like there's fog, there's atmosphere, there's oxygen, or whatever the heck it breathes on whatever planet it's on. All right, so once we got that, I'm going to start indicating very lightly where I want that first plant petal to be. Right, like that. Okay, now you can see it just like a sharp petal right there. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill it slightly darker with some value. I'm starting at the tip darker, and then I'm fading it lightly down the petal. Okay, so, and I'm going to explain why I'm doing that. Now, when you look at the tip of that, the plant petal, that darkest part looks like it's closest to us. As I move down the shaft, it gets lighter. I already put in that misty shade around it. Now it looks like it's flowing directly into that mist. Those values are very close together. And I achieved this by no outlining at all other than the very light scribble of that first petal. That's it. All of this surrounding it, I can get darker right here and make it look like some smoke or mist is coming over the petal. Like that. I held the pencil slightly to the side again. Like this. Now the reason I'm not zooming in a lot is because I want you to see the picture as a whole. That's the important part. So when I zoom out even more, you're going to start to see the effect of that petal poking out. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave it zoomed out this time around. There we go. I'm going to get a little darker over here. The light source is somewhere up here, maybe to the right. Not center, but let's just picture it's coming through the canopy this way. All right, so once I have that, get a little darker. And I'm going to make it come right into that mist again. This is where the play of values really comes in. Okay, so think about, in layman's terms, foreground, middle ground, background. Okay, the head in the foreground, the torso and tail in the middle ground, and then the tail spikes and the leaves and the slight indication of canopy in the background. Notice how this is darker, this is medium, that's light. That's atmospheric perspective, folks. Easier said than done, I know. This is going to take some time to practice, and we're not done with this area yet. So in order for it to show up how you guys are looking at it through the screen, I might need to get a little darker on that petal. Right about there. Okay, so I'm going to fade that off. I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to add some more value in that corner. Okay, I'm going to turn my sketchbook slightly, right about there, just to get another interesting angle here. I'm going to go right up the plant shaft. Notice how I have total creative freedom on shading on top of what I already drew. This is where layering really comes in when you do atmospheric perspective, because let's face it, it's about atmosphere. It's not about details. You want to achieve atmosphere first, and then you put your details in later, and then they can go side by side. So what I mean is, like, if you're doing a jungle scene like this or a mountain scene, you can outline where the mountains are, but get all of your values in first, all of them. So that way you know what's dark, what's medium, and then what's light. Okay, so let's make some more plants come out of here, but in slightly different shapes. So let's say we got another stalk coming in on the side. So I'm going to stay zoomed out. And the reason is because I could zoom in and then you can see it perfectly, but we're not seeing this zoomed in as if we were walking through the jungle. We want these things to show up however we would view them in real life. So see how that petal is coming out. All I'm doing is I'm just fading the petal down into that fog that I already drew. Okay, now, what if we wanted to put another petal in front of both of them? Okay, well, if you're drawing along with me, how would you do that? All right, the answer is we're going to make it darker than both of these together. And watch what happens. So we're going to give an outline first just so I can get something that I like. I'll put a slightly different shape and maybe some insect marks on there where it looked like they ate the petal. Okay, now up here is really important. This petal right here is going to be darker than both of these. All right, so I'm going to push harder than the others. All right, so what I'm doing now is I'm pushing harder, but I'm also lining up my strokes. So I'm going left to right, okay, and I'm making sure that one stroke is covering the other one, and then I'm going back over it, like this. Now, the tip of my pencil right here, and let's see if that focuses. That probably doesn't focus. There's a little flat spot that's forming on there. It's like the sweet spot that all of us artists love to draw with, because when we flatten out the tip on any pencil, it's like the perfect flatness, and we don't want to get rid of it. So take advantage of that, and then I'll just flip the page over, or the pencil over. Now, notice how what I did. This petal that I drew first is lighter now. The one in the foreground that's closest to us got dark right here. Now, why did I put that dark stroke right there next to that one? Because I'm playing with the values. And there's no detail happening. It's just what's in the background, what's in the foreground, what's in the middle ground. And they all have to play together in order to have something believable. So let's make this a little darker. Right, like this, and I'm just going to walk the strokes down. And now the strokes here, this is where I can zoom in a little bit. So let me zoom in again. All right, let me move the sketchbook over. Okay, now that we can see the strokes, you see how they're kind of broken up at the end? I don't want that. So I'm going to do little circles. They're not really circles. They're kind of like flattened ovals. And I'm just going to go back one at a time over the other one. And then this is where I need to be careful, because this is where polishing really comes in handy with your sketches. And what I mean by polishing is whenever you have two different values next to each other, you want to avoid seeing the streaks where you can identify where the other value is. This is about atmospheric perspective, and that means fading one shape into the other to make it look like it belongs in an environment. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to lightly fade it off into the value that I already put down. This is where patience comes in too. Now, the more you layer this, the more you're going to polish it. And I feel that a lot of aspiring artists and beginner artists skip this part just because they're not patient. They want to quickly finish it and then post it online to get likes and all this stuff. And it's like the polishing that you do to finish a drawing off is going to be the difference between having a nice finished piece and proof that you can finish it versus something half finished and it looks like you rushed. All right. So, and that's a whole other lesson too. I think I covered some of those lessons in my other playlists. I'm still not satisfied with how this is fading off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the direction a little bit. I don't need to switch my sketchbook direction. I'm just tilting my hand slightly. And I'm going to fade it right off into the paper. I mean, obviously the paper, but I'm talking about the tone of the paper. There we go. Okay, so that original tone that I had around there is really starting to play into this. Now here's the fun part. I can look at how light and how dark some of those areas are, and I can just start like plugging in tiny little indications of maybe smaller grass stalks coming through here, coming through the mist. All right, so you see there's a lot of really cool stuff happening now. So my selling point is still this creature's head. All right, this is the money shot. This is what's selling the picture, okay? The eyeball is tilted slightly upwards because it sees this yummy, weird caterpillar thing, and it's going to eat them. There's two of them here, okay? Now, when I start putting these little shapes in here, it's going to start to look like the creature is actually passing through these little patches of weeds. And also, you want to play with, like, especially if you're doing an environment, you want to play with variations of the shapes that you're doing. These three grass stalks, I'm just going to call them grass stalks. These three stalks, they look similar. I mean, yeah, but once I start playing with different shapes surrounding it, that's when it's going to start being believable. Because let's face it, go outside today, or go outside in the springtime when you're barefoot, or when you're, walking through grass. Each grass stalk is different. All right. When you're going through the woods, no plant's the same. Now that I have these, I'm going to do something real skinny. So, okay, so here's another atmospheric perspective trick. This is where I'm playing on the values. This middle stalk right here that I originally drew, coupled with this very dark one that's obviously in the front of us. What if I want to put something in the middle of both of those? Okay, this is where I'm going to go back to my cheeky response of, well, don't push as hard. That's exactly it. Don't push hard. Push medium. Okay, so you want to do it lightly first. I'm going to push a grass stalk right up here, and it's going to be in front of everything else. See all that stuff happening behind it? Okay, I want this grass stalk to show up over top of all those, over top of this one, but it's not quite dark enough to be on top of that one. So that's why I'm starting lightly, and I'm just, it's almost like you're walking it, okay, or hand holding it. I'm going to get a little darker. Okay, now we're talking, because now look what's happening. That stalk is darker than this one, so I want to make sure that I continue that over here. Okay, there we go. So now we can start playing with maybe little petals or whatever is growing on these. You want to make sure that these are just as dark, so it looks like they're in front of all the other weeds that's happening. So look what I did, everybody. Just in this tiny little area, I just gave it so much more depth with perspective, atmospheric perspective, making it look like it's humid. There's definitely a living, breathing creature in here. Oh, and here's the other thing. Now that I made this dark, guess what I have to do? I have to look at the exoskeleton on this lizard and think, wait a second, this one is showing up even closer than this one. Okay, so guess what I got to do? I got to get even darker with this one. So maybe there's like a black tip on part of that exoskeleton, and it's going to be sharp and it's going to come up. Well, look at that. Look what happened now. So now we have the foreground. We have the middle ground over here that's equal to all this exoskeleton. Or, I'm sorry, just the scales and exoskeleton that's on the creature. And then we have the background. So it's still working. So now what we have to do is any new plants that I put in here, I have to make sure that they stay lighter than that. So see how I'm sketching directly over that sharp shoulder piece? That's okay. You can sketch over it. It doesn't matter. There's no perfection needed here because this is super dark. That's directly at us. So any other value that I put on is going to be lighter, so there's no need to try to work your way around that little spike. There's no point. Just let it happen. Now, if I want to put some grass petals over top of the creature a little bit, it's going to have to be darker than the creature. That's the thigh right there. It's kind of like bent up. So now I got to go under that. There you go. So like all of this arm now will probably have to be darker. Here's the fun part. This is in the front, okay? Over here, this is like jet black, okay? I used a black Prismacolor for it. 4B can get pretty dark for the area that I'm working in. So notice how this is the elbow for the lizard. It's slightly behind this, so that means it's going to be darker, but not as dark. Don't push as hard. Work your little circles in and make sure that the values are looking good, like this. And then I'm going to add in some more shadow directly on that arm. So the fun part about this is we're going to start to see some cast shadows happening that I did not have before. So now look at the outline of that tricep right there, and then there's a little elbow, and there's a little crease where the bicep and the forearm meet. Oh man, it's really changing everything. I could obsess about this for the next 6 hours, but I'm not going to do that. Okay. But when you're doing atmospheric perspective, just be sure and be mindful of the layering that you want to do, okay? Because now what's happening is when I'm looking at this group of plants, okay, maybe it's all coming out of the same stem. That's fine. So when I come in here and I start drawing a little thicker down there because it's growing out of the same stem, I want to make sure that the value, you respect what you did before. So this stays the same tone. Notice how I'm going over those spikes because it's lighter and it's not affecting it. These two tones are the same, so I got to make sure that that's thicker. Now, here's another fun part. Let's say we don't know what's happening down here, okay? So let's use some of the mist effect. All right, and let's just fade this directly up into the plant. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take some of that mist and we're just going to fade it off up into the air like this. It doesn't even matter where it's going. So what this does is when you start layering values of like fog or mist right on top of the white paper, it's okay. You don't have to take your finger and smudge anything. Just use this value, use the texture, so it looks like the atmosphere's thicker. And then you just start layering it, okay? Because there's a lot of stuff happening in here just with these plants. And that's the fun part. Do you see the whiteness that's happening right above that shoulder piece? The actual shoulder piece could get darker now. Watch what happens. Look how much that pops off. Just because I got darker with the shoulder. Now there's a different play in values here. This is lighter, this is darker. Maybe there's some ambient or bounce light happening within that mist down there and it's bouncing directly back up onto the body. Okay, but the shoulder piece is in shadow. All right, now notice here. Notice how I stopped shading the shoulder because it's closest to this shadow right here. You want there to be contrast. I know I'm throwing a lot of terms at you right now, but please believe me when I say that when you start drawing bigger pictures like this as a whole, just walk yourself through how one value looks against the other. If it's too similar, see if you can change it up. When you start adding atmospheric perspective in there, it's going to look similar, but that's only if it's growing out of something. So for example, these bushes or these plant stalks are growing out of something mysterious happening within that mist. Okay, not all of your stuff is going to have mist. If you do an environment piece where you're doing mountains and trees and maybe like a pasture with animals or whatever, maybe it's like a clear sunny day and all you have is some haze. Okay, so you're going to see haze over the mountains. So the mountains in the far background are going to be the lightest and so forth. All right, so I hope this helps with atmospheric perspective too. And this creature is kind of funny. I originally started with an iguana and I thought, you know what does an iguana look like on another planet? I don't know. So let's zoom out so you can see the picture as a whole. Whoa, that's like really far. Okay, let's zoom out a little bit more. Okay. Oh, and then this one is a demon coming out of a book. Yep. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed today's lesson. If you really like this lesson, like and subscribe, and also comment below and tell me what you're struggling with. Every time you guys comment and tell me what you're struggling with, it gives me a better idea of the type of lessons that I can do at a later time. Also, the other thing is I am going to be getting into some more creature designs too. So, I mean, we're talking about super scary stuff because I specialize in very eerie, creepy stuff, especially for the creatures I design for games and film. That's going to be a lot of fun.